Thanks for checking out the Generosity Labs podcast. Generosity and giving as it relates to the church is one of the biggest and most important conversations we can have across faith communities. That's why we're here. On the Generosity Labs podcast, hosted by Kenny Jang, we will talk to pastors, consultants, service providers, and other church leaders. We're going to discuss the current trends, models, and best practices for developing giving as a robust part of your community life and how you can get a culture of generosity to flourish from the inside out. Join us every week right here for the Generosity Labs podcast. Check out www.generositylabs.org for more details and fantastic free resources made available just for you and your church.
Hi to all our church leaders tuning in today. My name is Kenny Jang, and generosity and giving as it relates to the church is one of the biggest and most important conversations we can have across faith communities. And that's why today we have Nadine Raphael. So glad to have you on the show today, Nadine.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Nadine, you've been with the Christian Life Center in Florida for the last 16 years, right?
That is correct, yes.
So I believe you served in a variety of roles, as business administrator, community life pastor, and now most recently you've taken on the role of chief operating officer?
That's correct, yes.
So let's just get right into it. Let's hear a little bit more about you and your church. Tell us a little bit about what your role really means on a daily basis, and what does your church community look like? If we were to come visit on a Sunday and sit down in a seat and look around, what would it look like? What would we feel like in your community?
Well, Christian Life Center has been around for over 40 years. Recently, we went through a transition as our previous senior pastor took the opportunity to raise up the next generation of leaders and then move out into more international missions. And so our current senior pastor, Pastor Tom Manning, has been with us for 5 years. Prior to him getting there, it was pretty much a traditional older crowd that we knew. It was a strong crowd. It's been around for a long time, but we knew that we needed to connect more with younger families and young adults and things of that nature. And so over the past 5 years, we have morphed into just a melting pot from the youngest of young. So we have a strong children's ministry. Our young adults is a vibrant community of over 1,000. And then we have from young adults to obviously senior age. So we're a population of about 4,000 to 5,000. And now we're making a strong presence into the community, just doing a lot of outreach events and missions events. We're very vibrant. We're known for our worship style. It's very engaging. When people come to our church, that's one of the first things that they talk about. So I've been here just transitioning with all of that, being on 2 phenomenal senior pastors. And now my role on a day-to-day basis is to oversee the entire operations of the church. We have 4 campuses. So overseeing the day-to-day operations of all of that, being a lighthouse, obviously, in our community as well.
That's pretty cool. So I think that and the Fort Lauderdale area is just fabulous. It's a great place to be in.
Oh, yes.
And since you've been there for such a long time, what is the demographic span? I believe, from my understanding, especially in that area, you have a good mix of, it's not one of those communities where it's just elder population or just young, dynamic. Does your church really have a cross-section of decades?
Oh, yes. Not only decades, but we also have 32 nationalities represented in our congregation. But we span generally, like I said, we have a strong young adults presence. And then our young families, the 30s and 40s age group is also very strong in our community, and then obviously our senior age. But one of the things that I do want to point out that because it's an also initiative for us, we are seeing a larger demographic of single parenting. And so we've used, our church as a hub to help single parents, reach out to single parents and equip single parents on how to help them parent their children all by themselves. And so that's a new demographic that we're also seeing growing, not just in our context, but also across the United States.
That's really cool that your church is doing that, or you're aware of the changing dynamic of your community.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about giving and generosity in your church. You've got a great, compelling story. Tell us a little bit about that journey of transitioning donors online. And so first of all, what are all the different types of ways that people can give online? They can give by paper, check, and cash,
That's
right?
Correct.
And do you have an offering basket that gets passed, or how does that work on a given Sunday?
Yes. Okay, so we have an offering plate that gets passed throughout our services, obviously. And then we do have online giving, we have text giving, we have mail-in giving, we have ACH giving. And so have about 5 different ways that people can give. With the majority still, we do come from a traditional background, so you do still have those that give by cash and check. So when we were trying to make this transition, I'll tell you honestly, our board members were concerned.
Yeah.
Those that were on our staff, they were concerned because they didn't know, okay, is this biblical? How are people going to respond to this? The text says, bring your tithe into the storehouse. How are people going to respond to this? And I was one of those skeptics. I've been around 16 years here at Christian Life Center. So I was one of those skeptics to wonder, okay, is it going to offend anyone that we're trying out some electronic giving? But we know what? We decided that we needed to provide a way for different ways. We have different demographics from younger to older, that not everyone carries around checks like they used to. Not everyone carries around cash for safety purposes. Yes. More and more people are using the plastic cards. And so we decided that we needed to appeal to all ages. And once we did, to be honest with you, what we saw was, Kenny, a large number of our congregation embraced it. And not only that, we developed a new pool of giving for first-time givers that were just watching online and started to give. And so we saw a bump of 20%, which was huge for us. And then we started realizing that, wait a minute, this was what we understood, is that people wanted to give. It didn't matter how they give. Yeah. Giving is a thing of the heart and not a method. It wasn't so much caught up in the method as it was, God has inspired me to give, and I want to give back to what he's given me, and I want to make a difference. And so they were just open to the fact that, okay, this is a convenient way for me to give, and it's also a safe way for me to give as well.
I love that. So there's so many things to unpack here. That's so good. Let's talk about those new givers. So you're saying that there are people that started to give for the first time to your ministry electronically, yes, not through cash or check. Their first transaction was electronic, digitally.
Yes.
And it accounts for up to 20% new audiences that you guys have reached.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
What do you do there for the follow-up? Because and are you finding that they're repeat givers, or is it just one and done?
No. They're repeat. I mean, you have your few that's one and done. They watched our service online and then they wanted to give that way. But for the 99% are repeat givers. What we found was that even with what we thought it was going to be our young adult generation, but we also found that it was just families. It was young families, even in our senior community. It was those as well. And I think what people started finding, to be honest with you, Kenny, is just the convenience of it all. It was just a click of a button. They added us to their mobile device called CLC Giving. They named it something like that. So each time we presented a project or it was time to give in tithes and offering, they just took out their mobile devices and it was a click of a button. And I do want to point something else out that we found later on, is that there were natural disasters that were coming up, emergency issues that were coming up that the church wanted to participate in, that people didn't know on that particular weekend that they were going into a service where there was going to be a pull or an ask to give towards a natural disaster. So they wouldn't have been prepared. But because we provided this way of text giving, they were able to participate in the moment. Because some people would say, well, I'll go home and next week I'll participate in it. But the moment is gone. The feeling, the tug of the heart is gone. So it was good for them to be able to give in that moment while they were being compelled by the Lord. That's quite awesome. Yeah.
So you have both directed giving and general giving. So you have the ability to. So do you have special codes, or how do you know if you're raising money for a missions trip or disaster? How do you message that from the stage?
Okay, so what we would do is if we knew that we had a giving towards Haiti or something like that, we would create a keyword called Haiti. We're huge on missions in our congregation. We give towards local, statewide, and nationally, of course. And so we would just create those keywords that represents those projects. So when we would present the ask to the congregation, we would just tell them, in order to give to this particular project, just put the keyword Haiti, or put the keyword flood, or something like that.
So so a couple things. Where does that planning start? Is it with the pastor? Is it a giving team, the finance? Is it the actual ministry team? In terms of being able to say, hey, we should use a keyword and we should the messaging from the stage on a Sunday is so precious, right?
Right.
So what is that process internally, and how long in advance does someone have to lobby for that? And how long does it take to actually light up a keyword so that you guys can start using it?
Okay, so two things. So it's basically three individuals. It would be the senior pastor, the business administrator, and myself. And so once we know that there's a project coming up, we'll go ahead and just get together to say, okay, what's the best word for that? And it could be a text, it could be an email. It's very minuscule.
Yep.
But sometimes we have given in the moment. My senior pastor sometimes can be very spontaneous. So from the pulpit, sometimes he'll say, well, you know what? I just feel that we need to give towards this particular family, or we need to give towards this particular project. So our business administrator from her phone, from her mobile device, can actually create the keyword while he's live on the platform, and the people can give just like that towards that keyword.
I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
So what system are you using for that, to be able to make it that easy?
We use CCB. You mean the background information for database? Yeah, we use Church Community Builder, which is CCB, which
That's
integrates
one of the major
with
players for the church management systems. And then for the text to give, what service are you using for there?
Kindred.
Kindred, yes. They use a smart giving platform. So does Kindred, let's talk about the back office operations there, right? So just some logistics. Let's nerd out a little bit. So you have Kindred giving. People, you message from the platform, people give on a Sunday. How do you reconcile that into the CCB donor profile? What's the process? Is there a data entry team? How do you actually hook up the two systems together? Is that easy, hard?
Okay. At one point, it was difficult before we started using Kindred text giving, because what would happen is people will give online through our third-party giving system online before we had text giving. And then we would have to match that person, enter them into the system, and it would just be a little cumbersome. Through text giving, their name through the Kindred through their whatever the back system that they're using,
right?
It automatically matches the person in our CCB database.
So it's not a manual process.
No. Now, if the Kindred system cannot find this person because it was a first-time giver,
right,
in our CCB database, it puts them in a holding pattern to let us know these are your first-time givers, and we can actually gain their information through Kindred, because Kindred has stored their information and actually add them now to our database. So we can send them a thank you letter.
Wow.
We can send them their giving statements. So it has really helped us to stay in contact with our first-time givers.
Yeah, I like it when, that's what computers are supposed to do, right? Technology is supposed to make our lives easier. And when you can integrate all that, that's great. So you don't have multiple databases that you need to look into for someone's giving history.
Oh, no. No. We just have one database, which is CCB.
Gotcha.
That we can actually look at their giving. We can print out their statements. We can email their statements. And it has every way that they've given. So sometimes a person may give cash, sometimes that same person may give a check, and sometimes that person will text. So all of that is combined onto their giving statement.
And and the CCB profile has all that history in one place.
Yes.
Great. And then, so you said that the text giving is actually something that people have embraced. A large percentage of your congregation actually ends up giving by text. What percentage is that at this point?
Well, it's 30%, a little bit above 30%.
Wow.
That has embraced the giving. And I mean, it trickled in. It started out about 5 to 10%. And as we kept, I think it was important for the senior pastor to continue to present it from his speaking platform, and then to encourage them too that this was a safe way of giving. Kindred also provided us with just a very clean 3-step process of how the member from the congregation can get their giving set up through text. And once we played that video in our Sunday morning services, it was just easy for everyone else to follow suit. And so now it just continues to grow. And even in our giving society, people are just more comfortable now with carrying around a plastic as opposed to check.
Now, you said 20% new givers in your community, which means it must be pretty easy in terms of instructions. It's not some complicated, manifesto they have to go through in order to figure it out. So on a given Sunday during your offering time, literally, how do you message that text to give? Is it on the screens? Do you play that video every single week? Is it on envelopes? Is it in the bulletin? What are you literally saying to get people to understand how to text to give?
Okay, so several different ways, because people learn through different methods. And so what we've done, we've placed the video of how to give on our website.
Okay.
In our on our envelopes, our tithing envelopes, is also the simple steps, 3 simple steps on the back of that envelope, so that they can give there as well. If they're giving by check, but they can also know that they can give by text. In our tithe talk, we also communicate the number on a screen while we're doing our tithe talk. And we'll just simply say, we have different ways for you to give. It doesn't matter which way you choose. All is honored by God if you're giving with a heart of thanksgiving. And we'll put that number on the screen, and it has the 3 steps right underneath the number. But initially, when we were first going live with this initiative, we did play the video a few times and a few weeks in our services.
But today there's no need to. You just put it on, and still first time givers are actually lighting up. So it's not like it's a complicated process, it seems.
No, not at all.
Gotcha.
It's a very simple step.
Okay, so looking back, you said you were one of those that had hesitations at the very early conversation level. And I think that's what a lot of people who are watching today, listening into this conversation, they're in the same place. What was one of the biggest concerns that you had back then? Is it logistics? Is it finance? Is it the percentage? Is it the theology? What was the largest obstacle in your mind when you were thinking about that process for your church?
The theology piece. I thought that there was a lack of it wasn't personal. So I attached giving to, I don't know, I guess because I was raised old school in the church, that you put it in the offering plate. So I was caught up on the method and not the heart. And so once I reconciled that scripturally, that God cares about the heart and he does things differently and he's doing a new thing, and that we can't box God in to say that this is the only way it can be done. Once I jumped over that hurdle, I realized that I could have been the blockage of allowing people to participate in an act of worship. Giving is an act of worship, and I didn't want to come between that.
So, and then one final question about the actual experience. Has total giving gone up, down, stayed the same? Has there been a sacrifice? Has giving gone down? What is it like today?
Our giving has increased every year.
Really?
Every year, yes. Every year we see a steady climb. We're at the close of 2016. We had our budget meeting actually yesterday, and just thanked God for the increase that he has granted to our church body. And so we have steadily climbed in our giving and in our congregation generosity.
And so one of the other obstacles people talk about is that people are unwilling to give large amounts via text. Have you seen that as the numbers come in, or is it only small digit giving that's coming through text?
No, people give their tithe through the text. Some people tithe monthly. Some people tithe weekly, bi-weekly. We actually have a cool story there was someone that was watching. We have a Heart for the House, which is our Vision Day sermon series, where we just go all in sacrificial giving. And someone was watching us online. I forgot what country that they were in, but they weren't in the United States, and gave $15,000 through an online giving. And so we were shocked. We thought, okay, this isn't real. It's going to come back saying this was a mistake. But no, it was real. And so people are willing to give if the cause is there and if God is tugging at their hearts. I don't think it's a matter of the process. I think it goes back to the heart.
Yeah, I love hearing stories like that. Technology enabling ministry to reach worldwide and come together as one body. That's a great story. Great story. So thank you so much for your time. Let's end this interview with a lightning round of questions if you're ready, Nadine.
Okay, I'm ready.
So a lot of leaders are watching and listening today because they want to learn. They want to up their game. What's one good book, conference, or other resource that you might have stumbled upon or have been using recently that you can share with our audience today?
Well, I actually subscribe to Harvard Business Review. I'm a COO, and so it's just good for me to know what's the latest technology, what's going on out there in our world. I find that even outside of the church, people give towards charity, and I want to see what compels the person who's not following God to give towards charity organizations. And so learning from different scopes and not just in the church context, but outside the church context has helped me further the initiatives within our church and the kingdom.
I love it. I'm actually a subscriber to HBR. I love that.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so what's one big thing that you're looking forward to in the year 2017 regarding your church community?
I'm looking forward to more community presence. We do a lot of community outreach. I would like to see us go further, not just in the inner city. We're strong in the inner city, but also to those individuals that are in the homeless shelters, those individuals that are not even struggling financially, but they may be void of God and don't know it. And so I want us to see us partner more with different organizations to see how we can help our community and give hope in the light, especially in these times. There's just a lot of hopelessness.
I love hearing that. Great. The third question is, where are you getting your inspiration and education around giving and donor development? Where do you look to at this point?
I know this is going to sound cliche, but I'm sorry, Kenny. It's the honest truth. I actually look to the Word of God. I see that giving was God's idea. And so everyone that he's ever touched their heart, they became givers. And so if I look throughout Scripture and see that not only did God compel people to give, but he himself was a giver, then that helps me to know how to provoke generosity in others. I got to say this as well, Kenny. Sometimes we are afraid to ask people to give. And it's actually what people are waiting for is the ask. Because sometimes they see a big church or they see a thriving church and they say, oh, they don't need my financial help. And so if we present the cause in front of them or we present the opportunity in front of them, people are ready to respond.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for all your insights today. If people today wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best method to do that?
Well, I have a Facebook account. It's Nadine Raphael on Facebook as well, obviously /.com. And then I also have my email, nadine@clcftl.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today with us.
Thank you for having me, Kenny.
And thanks to our audience for listening into our conversation on digital giving and the church. Hope this episode has been useful to all of you. Do me a favor and like this episode and review us on the podcast on iTunes. It really helps us reach more church leaders across the country on such an important issue that affects the future of the church. Well, that's a wrap. I'm Kenny Jang for Generosity Labs. Till next time, check out our website at generositylabs.org. And remember, when we give from the heart, that's where the real giving starts.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode. Don't forget to join us every week right here for the Generosity Labs podcast. In the meantime, visit www.generositylabs.org for more details and fantastic free resources for you and your church.